All right, let's get this party started. You guys are like falling asleep in here. What's going on? I'm talking through a mic just to raise hell and get you guys awake or something. Jeez. Is everybody enjoying the conference? Cool. So guess what I'm talking about today? Opportunity zones. Do you know you can buy notes in Milwaukee for opportunity zones? I just had a meeting at 2 o'clock today with a guy from Face Servicing who's in Chicago, because we may buy assets from the city of Milwaukee that are in an opportunity zone. So it does happen. But today I'm going to talk to you about strategic investing in notes. So why would anybody want to invest in notes? Leverage. Aren't we all trying to find leverage? Yeah, in everything we do. I actually have a coach, a guy named Lewis Schiff, who is author of a book called Business Brilliant. And he's out in New York. He's from the Inc. 5000. And Lewis would ask us, it was like a CEO group, and he would ask us the same question. I'm paying this guy all this money. And he would literally only ask us the same question over and over again. And it's really, what are you going to leverage in your business or your personal life in the next 6 to 12 months that's going to catapult things for you, right? It's a good question, right? Is it technology? Is it people? Is it a JV partner? Is it capital? Is it education? How are you finding leverage? It's a good question. But the note business is all about finding leverage. When I first entered it, it was to, I got to a point where I had a bunch of properties, and I was like, hey, is there a way to be more efficient? And lending was one of those ways, right? So, your first note. Who wants to tell me about their first note? Huh? What was your first note? Okay. I'll give you 8%. No. Okay. So. No, I got you. So you made an arbitrage. But really, what question I'm really getting to, does everybody know what a note is? Right? It's a musical symbol. That's what my wife thinks, right? Or, believe it or not, it wasn't that long ago, I thought a loan meant to be all by myself, right? So, but no, my first note was my student loan. And the reason I bring that up, my student loan, is how ridiculous it was. It was like $6,500. And it was at like 6.5%, and my payment was $65 a month, right? Which is pretty ridiculous. That just shows you how long ago I went to school. But how many people would like that $65 a month payment? But I hated that payment. I had to pay that till I was 32, and that drove me nuts writing that extra check, just like it does today. Now today it's worse, obviously, because it's exponentially gotten that much worse. But if there's enough time today, I will tell you a story about how I paid for my youngest son's college with about a third of the money by utilizing notes. So we'll see what we can do if I don't run out of time. The opportunity for notes for me really came from the fact that I can buy something at a discount, especially delinquent notes, that has a high yield, that has collateral. So that's what made it sexy for me. And in the very beginning, I was just a regular... I went to school to be an accountant. I hated accounting, switched to management, got out of college, couldn't get a job, was in construction, and I ended up staying in construction for a long time until I got hurt. But at the same time, when I was in my 20s, I was living at home with my mom and my wife and my son, and I decided to go into real estate. My mom said, why don't you try getting your real estate license? And that's kind of how I got into investing. I started buying properties, and literally, took a class to get my broker's license, and the class was real estate investing, and the teacher said, how many people in here have credit cards? We all raised our hand. He said, how many people in here are buying houses with credit cards? And all the hands went down. And for me, I went home that night, I couldn't sleep, and I told my wife, I said, yeah, I'm thinking about buying houses with credit cards, and she's looking at me a little funny, is that going to affect my ability to go to the mall, all that kind of stuff. But so I started buying houses with credit cards. I was handy. I was in construction. I had the MLS. I was an agent. I just didn't have capital, right? And the credit card was kind of giving me my capital. And I would buy a house, fix it up, move a tenant in, refinance it, pay the credit cards back off, and rinse and repeat. Built up a portfolio, and then got into lines of credit after that. So it's kind of what happened. Today, I'm president of PPR. We manage several thousand loans. We own a couple hundred properties throughout the U.S. at any given time. We do a lot of REO. We sell a lot of REO. I'm still a real estate investor. I still have 18 properties. I used to have 40. Still own notes, that type of thing. And I wish I could say these were my kids. They're not my kids. They're my grandkids. So I'm getting up there, right? I actually have another one now, fourth one. So G-pop. So what do you think my second note was? Credit cards, right? It was the credit cards. But other people's money, right? It's all about using other people's money. Institutional notes, I got into by accident. I actually was running a real estate investment group called Ring. There's actually a Ring group in the Chicago area that Dan Breslin runs still. Well, that group originally originated in Philadelphia, and at one point, it started out small. They didn't have meetups back then. But it started out small, and the group grew. It ended up being in 5 states, 6 cities from Baltimore to New York, and the group grew to 8,000 people at one point. And I used to interview the speakers that would come to those meetings. And one of the speakers was somebody raising capital for pools of delinquent mortgages. And of course, they came, spoke, and I didn't do anything for 2 or 3 years. Anybody like that? And my partner did. He invested some money, got paid a high return. We're like, right before the downturn in the market, my partner reached out to me because he knew I raised capital. At the time, I was raising capital for commercial real estate. And he said, will you raise capital for notes? And then we reached out to that person and said, show us how to collect on delinquent debt, and we'll buy assets from you, and the rest is kind of history, right? Here we go. So why invest in notes? No toilets, no tenants, no inspections, and no contractors. You know what they say about contractors, right? They're worse than the tenants. I know, I was a contractor. Okay. So what are some of the advantages? Passive cash flow, truly passive though, right? It's not like real estate. Real estate from the IRS is passive, but when your property manager calls you with bed bugs, is it really passive? Maybe, maybe not, right? Volume and control. Do you think Bank of America would rather have 30 million properties or 30 million mortgages? You get the idea. It's very scalable, right? It's profitable in various market conditions, too. You just, shift your strategies a little bit. Collateral, we talked about. It's versatile and liquidity with notes. You can sell a note very quickly. You can sell a note in 15 minutes. You can't sell a property, except on eBay now, in 15 minutes. A little harder, right? Socially conscious investing, if you do a modification for a family and keep them in their home, it is kind of socially impactful. Or if it's a vacant property that's all boarded up and you can turn it around and get it back into the rent tax rolls, you're doing good that way as far as socially impactful. So where do you find these things? Online, right? Auction.com, PaperStack, those types of sources. Note brokers. There's a bunch of note brokers. There's loan exchanges, like the old FCI exchange. It's called something else now. There's, all kinds of note brokers. Colonial Funding is a note broker. There's various note funds. PPR is a note fund, my company. There's hundreds of note funds that sell notes. There's banks and servicing companies. And then there's private sellers as well, right? So there's a lot of places to find notes. You may or may not be familiar with those. A lot of real estate folks aren't familiar with it. It's a little bit of a different world. But if you network with people that do notes regularly, you'll quickly find out where they're at and who's selling them. Second liens versus first liens. Not that I'm going to teach you everything in 30 minutes or 45 minutes about first liens or second liens. I just want you to be aware that the due diligence, especially, is totally different. And I just don't want to see anyone get hurt if they're venturing into one or the other. So by that I mean what we look at when we buy first liens or second liens. Does everybody know what a first lien and second lien difference is? Right, okay. What we look at is completely different. So with first liens, it's more sticks and bricks. It's more about geography. It's more about fair market value. It's more about title. It's more about the lien report, right? It's more about value. With junior liens, it's more statistical. They're actually sold differently. Junior liens are sold on UPB. They're not sold on fair market value. So if you apply the due diligence of one to the other, you're going to get in trouble potentially, right? So just keep that in mind. The way you collect on them is different. The way you exit these deals is different. So junior liens, your best exits through the borrower, for example. With first mortgages, your best exits usually through the property, right? So it's a different philosophy, different exit. Just be aware of it, that's all. Some of the stuff you look at, another classic example is credit reports, right? We'll look at a credit report for a junior lien. We really don't look at credit for a senior lien normally when we're buying those, right? So you're looking at different information to make your decision. And just be aware that it's a different animal and you look at different things, right? So why do people stop paying? 4 main reasons, right? Death, divorce, job loss, and medical. Those things never really tend to go away. The biggest probably, economic difference for the note business is probably jobs, because the rest kind of stay the same, right? Why is this doing this? Modifications. So how do we work through a delinquent asset when we get one with a borrower? Typically, an asset manager will reach out to a homeowner, and in our cases, a lot of times they'll tell them stories of other families we've helped. They don't tell them what to do. Like, you can't steer a borrower into doing what you want them to do, but you can show them the options and help them, plant seeds that they make a decision. For us, we don't care what they do. We just want them to make a decision and get off the fence when they're in distress, right? So the one conversation might go like this. Hey, we had a family in Oregon we were able to help. They were able to access their 401k penalty-free, and our corporate accepted a discounted payoff. Is that something that would interest you with your mortgage? And you may not know that you can access that, or you might go, hey, I don't have a retirement account. And I go, great, well, maybe, we have a friends and family program. I had a woman in Delaware who reached out to her uncle, and her uncle lent her the money, and we sold the asset to the uncle. Now, the uncle may or may, think about that. Would a relative buy the asset for another relative? See, that's the type of thing a bank normally wouldn't do, right? So we may sell the loan to someone else at a discounted payoff, right? So, and that you might say, I don't have any friends and family. Everybody hates me or whatever. You might say, hey, we have a discounted arrears program. So sometimes we'll go through a litany of things. Could be, hey, do you have an income tax check? Do you have an insurance policy? Do you have, what other sources of money you may have to put towards arrears or to put towards back taxes? So you're always addressing the arrears and back taxes, or you're addressing payment when you do a modification, right? Does anybody do modifications in here? Anybody do notes in here besides this gentleman? Okay, oh, that's right, yeah. And payment plans, we kind of talked, it's kind of the same thing when you work out a payment plan with somebody. Now, if you don't do modification or something with the borrower, then obviously you're exiting through the property where it's cash for keys, deed in lieu, or foreclosure, those types of things, right? So I think the easiest way to show you some of this is just to show you a case study, because you can kind of get a sense of, well, how does this really work, right? So this was a junior lien that we are exiting through the borrower, for example. And this one is in Milton, Massachusetts. The original note was $76,500, and you can see we bought it for $14,600. It was a 15-year loan. Payment was just under $700. The rate was 7.25. Anybody want to guess the highest junior lien I've seen? No one? No one wants to guess? 17.75. That's almost like the bookie, right? And the note payoff on this was $84,594. So you can kind of get a sense of how far behind they are. The rears, $12,570. Fair market value is $450. And in this case, the senior lien was $370. So there's really not quite enough equity to cover the whole note, right? But you bought it for a discount, right? And the senior lien was current. So we like when the senior lien is current because it tells us they have a source of revenue and they want to stay, or they wouldn't be paying their first mortgage, right? So in this case, the husband had gotten injured, was unemployed for over a year. We started a mail campaign. We'll typically do a mail campaign, phone campaign. They'll send a door knock service with a cell phone. Hey, we're trying to reach you, that kind of thing. Be an asset manager on the other end sometimes. But in this case, they responded to the mail campaign. They called us. This guy wanted to stay. He had 2 children. He was back to work as a police officer. He was hoping to get his payment down to $500. It was up closer to $700 before. So that's what we did. We extended the term to a 30-year amortization. It was originally a 15-year loan. You see what we can do? You can modify the term, push it back, lower the payment. We lowered the rate. It was, I think, 7 something. We lowered it to 6.5. And his wife was actually put $5,000 towards arrears from her IRA account, right? So pretty cool, right? And then after that, we turned around and sold that note for $43,000 as a performer. So you kind of see the summary of this. We sold it for 43. We paid 14,610. Monthly payments, we received a couple payments. We received the arrears. We really didn't have any legal. Mostly, we usually do have legal. We usually send at least a demand letter. That'll trigger. There's different triggers that'll, a borrower would call in on or something or respond to. Could be foreclosure, could be a sale date, could be a demand letter, various things. This was an early on. Somebody called in early. There wasn't a big legal expense. Just to give you color, the typical non-contested foreclosure in the U.S. is $2 to $3 grand. Some states are more, obviously. New York might be $5 to $8 grand. Hawaii, they're more expensive states. And you can see here our net income. I don't know. I can barely see it myself. It's $49,498. So you can see that we did it in 5 months, so the ROI is kind of off the charts. Now, is every deal like this in junior lien world? No. We have loans we get wiped on. We have loans where, So, here's a funny thing people say to me sometimes. They'll say, do you buy loans in Detroit? And I'm like, yeah, we've bought loans. But it depends. If it's a junior lien, if it's a high equity junior lien, then it's very geographic like a first mortgage. But I've bought junior liens for $60 and $80. So would I buy an $80, $100,000 mortgage in Detroit? Maybe. It might come with a package, right? So you got to put it in perspective of what your risk profile really is based on what you have invested as well, right? So this is a first. Any questions on that junior lien? Yeah, 50 of them. Right? You mean what we sell is performing, or what does the world consider performing? It's usually 12 months. We sell reperformers with a warranty, so we sell them with less than 12 months payments, but we warranty and we'll do a buyback, that type of thing. So, you got a question? FCI Exchange, or no? Well, I have a shameless plug. I wrote a book called Real Estate Note Investing on Bigger Pockets, and in the there was some free giveaways that went along with that if you bought it through Bigger Pockets. And one of them was us going out to websites with Brandon Turner, and we were literally showing all the things we looked at when we bought a first lien, second lien, performing, non-performing, all the criteria we looked at when we were trying to buy a note online. So if you buy that package, you'll get all that data of like what we look at and what we don't. And that's kind of what you're really asking. If I go online, what am I really looking at? But we go through like an hour and a half of that. Yeah. It would take too long. I would be tied up pretty long. Yeah. Our warranty is investment payments, investment principal minus payments received. And if you don't want to take that option, like say the loan redefaulted, you have the option to exercise the warranty, or we can just give you an attorney and you can foreclose. If we have an attorney in that state, we would give you our attorney. So this is a first lien, and it's in Oakland, Tennessee, not to be confused with Oakland, California. So it's not going to be worth as much, right? This original note was $85,000. We paid $31,875. You can see how more expensive first liens are, right? The lower they go, the cheaper they get, though. I think the cheapest first I ever bought was probably 12 cents, on the dollar. But that's rare today. You won't see it quite that cheap. But when you get lower, especially under 50 grand or 75 grand, you get lower and lower and lower. They get cheaper because the back taxes could be higher than the asset's worth, right? And your more expensive first mortgages, $250 and above, they tend to get bought up by insurance funds, pension funds. They gobble up all the expensive assets. Why? Because the collateral behind it's safer for them, right? So, makes sense. So this was a 30-year. You can see the payment was 706. The rate was kind of high, 9.3. The payoff was 92.5. You see the arrears, how far behind they are. Fair market value was 45,000, and the back taxes were 1501. So what's wrong with that? I'm trying to see if you're asleep. It looks like you are. You're basically totally unconscious at this point. Huh? It's underwater. So what happened there? So do you think that can happen? That the original note and then this fair market value. So what happened there was, did you ever get a BPO? Did you ever get a bad BPO? Does everybody know what a BPO is? Broker price opinion, right? So you send somebody out to the property, they come back with a value, you think it's worth 85, you foreclose a while later, you buy the asset, then you foreclose, you get the asset, you get out there and you find out, surprise, it's not that valuable, right? This is that case. But what I'm showing you here is not every case is roses like the previous one where there's a 200 plus ROI, right? This one is the opposite, right? So this one's a little bit, yeah, it's underwater, right? So how does it turn out? And it's vacant. What do you think happens with most firsts that are vacant? You're going to foreclose to get the property back, right? So in this deal, after completing foreclosure, we got a realtor to do a BPO. We then got a contractor to bid it, 19 grand for renovation. We decided to renovate it and then put it out for sale, right? This one we received an offer 3 weeks after the renovation for $74,500, and the buyer was purchasing it for his daughter. So here's a little summary here. Total income was $74,500. You can see what we paid, $31,000. Renovation, back taxes. This one had legal, right? We took it through foreclosure. And realtor fees. I hate those realtors. I'm actually a realtor, but I hate realtors. Their fees are too high. And net income that I can barely see again, $16,203 in 12 months. But if you notice, the ROI is still not too bad, right? Now, there could be ones, they can be worse than that too. But obviously, we win more than we lose, or we wouldn't be here, right? Recapitalization. The reason I bring this up is, does everybody know what recapitalization is? You own the note, you want to recapitalize on it. A lot of times I'll run into, especially real estate investors, they will often make the comment, oh, I don't want to get in the note business because if I buy a note, I just got to sit there and wait and collect payments, and it could be 30 years. But there's nothing, that could be nothing further from the truth to that, though, right? You can recapitalize very quickly. You can sell the note, you can flip the note. Almost anything you do with a house, you can do with a note, right? You could sell a partial. Does everybody know what a partial is? I could sell the next 5 years of payments on the note to an investor at a different interest rate, right? Sure. At a more favorable one for you, right? And I can also do a collateral assignment note mortgage, which means you can borrow against the note, and the note will act as collateral, almost like a car loan. You know how you go to a car dealer, he holds the title to the car, and then when you make the last payment, you get the title to the car? Well, a collateral assignment is kind of like that. If I were to do a promissory note with you, I can do a recording in the county courthouse where the house is located behind that note to protect the investor. He does a promissory note with me, my performing notes collateral. And in the very beginning, that's how we built our company. We didn't have a lot of note buyers at the time, and we would get a non-performing note reperforming and borrow against it. And basically, that was a loan. It was tax-free, right? When you sell a partial, it is taxable, right? So you can recapitalize, that's my point. Don't feel like you're locked into a note forever. So I wanted to give you a pool case study, because that's kind of really what we do. We do more on the pool side, and this is just a simple example of a pool. This was about 700 assets at junior liens with equity. The unpaid principal balance was $36 million. That means they owe us $36 million. Do you think we'll collect $36 million? No. I wouldn't be probably talking to you if I collected $36 million on that. The loan-to-value was 51%, and the combined loan-to-value was 73%, because keep in mind, this is a second lien pool. And we check the security, the collateral, right, the real quest. We do the fair market values. We do a credit check. We're doing a credit check to check senior lien status, because to us, that's more important than equity with junior liens. With first liens, it's all about equity. So there's a difference, right? We do a bankruptcy scrub through Pacer. We do some analytics. And then we overlay our cost, right? We have capital, personnel, servicing, legal. So a summary on this deal, we expect it to make 7.3. We had expenses of 790, purchase cost of just under 5 million. We expect to gross 1.7 and change, less cost of capital, and we'll make 1.2 million off just under a $5 million investment, right? So you can kind of see how a pool would work, right? So ways to get started in notes. Performing notes. It's my favorite thing. On the side, I don't really invest in non-performing. I only invest in performing, right? Note funds are another way. Some of the note funds out there are accredited investors only. Most of our funds are that way. We can sell a note to anyone, though. Anyone can buy an individual note. You don't have to be a high net worth investor. There are note funds out there that do either crowdfunding or they allow some unaccredited, so you can shop around and see that. The cheapest note fund I've seen to invest in with secured mortgages, which are residential mortgages, would be $100. So you don't need a ton of capital to get started in the note business. Also, the lending clubs of the world, right? You can invest $25 in those, right? Or non-performing notes, you got to know what you're doing. So I'm not saying don't do non-performing. I'm just saying if you do it, just be careful. You got to know what you're doing. Definitely get educated in the space. Network with people doing it. If you can find a mentor, coach, JV partner, something like that, that's probably the best way. Nobody says it has to be your money in the beginning. You can watch someone else do their deal and learn from them, that kind of thing. I don't want to see anybody get hurt on non-performing. There is more compliance with it, so just be aware of that. Seller financing is another great way. That's part of how I got into it. When I first started doing notes, I would often sell a property and carry a second. I still have mortgages from properties I've sold that I still collect on. Does anybody else do that? Hold paper when you sell? Something to think about. You can cash flow off a property you no longer own, right? Private or hard money, that was something else I still do today that I started out with early on, was doing. Any hard money lenders in here? There you go. We're in the note business too, right? I often tell the story that we're all in the note business, whether we know it or not. We're just not paying attention a lot of times, right? We all have credit card debt, student loan debt, auto debt, medical debt. That is all the note business, right? We're used to writing checks. We don't pay attention to what we're doing most of the time. Everything in this building was probably financed at some point, right? So keep that in mind. We're all in the note business, right? And peer-to-peer, I mentioned lending club. And receivables. Does everybody know what lending on receivables is? Okay. Receivables is like factoring, commercial notes. Anybody invest in commercial notes? Merchant cash advance companies. Are you guys aware of those at all? Yeah, you can invest. I invest in that myself. What that is a lot of businesses can't get a loan from a regular bank, so it's similar to hard money rates. And you're secured by the receivables of the business. But they pay higher returns. You're not really secured by a property, but you're secured by the receivables. So there are just some ways to get started. Some notes paying liabilities. So this is where notes can get fun. So I had a buddy one time, he was putting addition on his house, and he takes out a home equity loan to put the addition on. I said to my buddy, why don't you buy a note and borrow extra on your home equity loan, right? He borrowed extra, he bought a note, and the payment from the note paid back the home equity loan. He got a free addition. You follow that? It's like your investment. It's your notes paying your liabilities, right? Your assets paying your liabilities. Now, you could do that with other stuff. I'm not saying it has to be a note. It could be a hard money deal. It could be a property that cash flows. I know if my wife wants a new car, I always look at, what investment am I going to get to pay for her car, right? That kind of mentality. Free or low-cost life insurance. Same theory. I used to sell insurance. A lot of my high net worth clients, they don't pay for insurance. They'll take out a policy, they overfund it, they'll borrow the money out of the policy, they'll invest in something like a note. The note payment will pay back the loan and the premium. So they usually get free or low cost insurance that way. Does everybody follow that? Similar model, right? College for a fraction. So my youngest son was going to college, similar idea. The funny part is his fiance went to the same college. She paid the full rate, and he tells his future father-in-law how he paid a third of the money, which goes over like a lead balloon. But Here's what he did. So my son's going to college, and he's like, hey, Dad, are you and Mom going to write a check? And I was like, no, but I'll show you how to pay it back. So here's what's going to happen. So Junior took out a student loan. My wife took out a student loan. Why would we do that? Couldn't I write a check? Yeah. Did it make sense to write a check? No. Why would I take my money out of the market that's making a higher return than the rate of the student loan? You follow that? I'm losing money if I do that. Student loans, is it easier to get a student loan or a mortgage? Student loan, they're giving away like lollipops. Take it. It's great arbitrage, right? So I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. I'm teaching Junior some responsibility. If he has a loan in his name, doesn't he have to go to class? Sort of. Is it his credit? Yeah. Does he need to get a job when he gets out? Yeah. He has to pay a student loan, right? If I just paid it, he's not going to feel that way, right? Now, he was good. He was Dean's List. He's a good kid. So he goes to college. He gets out. And guess what happens? He can't get a job. He's working for me. So he comes to work for me, and it's, you know how you had that 6-month deferral? He's like, oh, I thought you were going to help me, show me how to pay this back. And I said, I am. How much money you got saved up? And he had around $5,000. And what we did was we bought a reperforming second mortgage, and he owed about 15, 17 grand, something like that. And the payment on the note he bought for $5,000 was about the same as the student loan payment, which was right around $300 a month. So you could see how the note, the payment of the note, paid back the student loan because the unpaid principal balance of that reperforming note was about what he owed. So you can buy a reperforming junior lien for about a third, 30, 40% of the unpaid principal balance. Does everybody follow that? So what he was able to do was pay off his college for about a third of the money. You know, and obviously did the similar thing with my wife, right? Also, student loan debt can be deductible in some cases, right? So you got to look at the whole picture of how we pay for things, not just paying for everything out of your pocket, whether that's an addition, life insurance, student loans, whatever that is, right? So here's how I know it kind of stuck for Junior. He was an English major and a writer, and he's moving to LA, and I take him down to the Philly airport. I hand him an envelope. It's the $5,000. He's like, what's that for? I said, well, I don't want you to tell anybody your old man didn't pay for college. But he moves out to LA, and he ships a used car out there. And about a year and a half later, the used car goes. So what do you think he does? He calls me up and says, no, he says, you got any short-term notes laying around? He got it, right? So I said to him, I said, how much you got saved up? So he had like $4,400 or something like that. And I was able to get him a 7-year note at about $290 a month. Guess what he did with that? He was able to lease a brand new Prius for $290 a month. So he got a new car, right? And you could do 2 3-year leases and still get another year of payment off the note, as opposed to getting a used car that you pay cash for, that you might get a year or two out of, that you're driving someone else's headache, right? Big difference in mindset. Now, he never got a second lease. He moved to New York, but you get the theory of your assets paying your liabilities. It's pretty powerful, right? It's definitely different. How many 23-year-olds think like that? Not too many, right? Assets paying liabilities. Obviously, I said I do have a book out on real estate note investing, and we do have some resources on our website. Like I said, try to get educated, get in a community. We do have events. I do an event on the East Coast in the fall, similar to this event. And there are other resources. We have a LinkedIn group. There's Facebook groups on notes. If you're really thinking about getting into it, you definitely want to network with more people doing it, attend more note events. There's Note Expo. There's a bunch of note events, Paper Source, distressed note conferences on the East and West Coast. It's usually at Dana Point or Newport Beach or in North Jersey. There are a lot of note conferences, just like real estate conferences, just a little smaller network. So I would love to take a few questions. I don't know. They're going to give me the axe soon. I'm not active at all in that process. I raise capital at my company, But I have a partner that oversees acquisitions. I have another partner that oversees servicing and asset management, that type of thing. So my partner, Bob, who oversees that, that's who would, obviously my one partner would acquire I raise the money, I hand it off to my partner, John, they acquire the assets, they bring them in, and then my other partner oversees the other piece. I have 30 employees, though, to your point. But I didn't always. There was a time when I started, I used to do modifications. This is going to date me a little. I used to use a laptop on the hood of my car with a Magic Jack, right? Remember Magic Jack? And that my 800 number would be tied to that. So that's how. But then, I guess when I had a full-time job, I did up to about 35, 40 assets before it really started to get crazy. It's hard to work a full-time job, and I had a flexible full-time job where I could make a phone call to a lawyer or something. But, so part-time, it's tough once you get up to that kind of numbers. And then our typical asset managers do 200 to 400 loans in each person's, bucket. They usually handle state-specific, a couple states or something, unless it's a big state. Ours, yes. We don't do other types of debt normally. We'll do some hard money stuff. Like we do work with some boots on the ground, and especially with first mortgages in our key states. We have like a top 15 states, and we'll have boots on the ground in different states. They'll actually go look at assets before we bid them. And if we win them, sometimes we'll sell them to them, or we'll even finance them with hard money. So. Well, this opinion, my opinion is partials make the best sense in down markets where there's limited equity. Like take that first where it was partially covered with equity. I can sell a partial that's the partial's piece is still covered with equity. So I can maximize that. If it's an up market, I prefer to do a collateral assignment because the collateral assignment's a loan. I don't have to pay tax on it. I can still own that piece of that, It's not a taxable event. So I recapitalize without paying tax. But if it's a down market, the partial might make more sense. I really don't do partials. Nothing against them. I just don't have time. And then we're doing more volume. That's all. But if you only have a couple loans, it makes sense. No one else? Put you all to sleep. No, that's okay. Keep going. Well, usually my first question to everybody is, what type of investor are you? Are you active, passive? What type of background do you have? What's your education level? What's your, time commitment? How much capital do you have? What are you comfortable doing? What are you best at? Some people are process people. I'm not one of them, right? Like there's some people so it's really finding out who you are and then what type of investor are you? What's your risk tolerance? Once you figure that out, now it's, how far do I want to go in a particular area? Some people, like me, I was in the junior lien space for a long time because we could position ourselves into a deal with a small amount of capital and we could spread our risk around with a lot of assets for the same price of one bigger asset, right? So now other people feel better in first world because they feel safer with their lien position. But it's about managing risk once you figure that out, Fifth. I've seen fifths, but it's rare. I mean, it's an odd duck. It's somebody had an SBA loan and a bunch of other crap in between. It's not the norm, though. Yeah, sometimes you'll buy a junior lien and you find out it's first. I bought what I thought was a first and it was junior lien, so I've seen both. You try to avoid that, but. Junior liens we buy nationwide anywhere pretty much. Some states are harder to work than others, like Hawaii's a little tough with the time zone. But we've bought loans in all 50 states pretty much. But the reality is, I'd say 92% of our portfolios in like 26 states, it's under 30. And it's because of population, not geography. So I'll give you an example. Wyoming, there's no people in Wyoming. There's no mortgages because there's no people. Vermont's another type state where you don't get a lot of activity. There's different like that. A lot of it's population driven. And some of it's product driven based on foreclosure timeline. Like right now, like the quicker states, a lot of the assets are kind of worked through from the downturn. Then it was the Rust Belt. Then a lot of it's in the Northeast now. The majority of assets today come out of New York and New Jersey. And they tend to trade at a bigger discount because it's longer timeline. But 2 minutes? They are all asleep. I put them out. Anybody else? I could take maybe one or two questions. No? You guys good? Cool. Thank you, guys.